Good morning, Internet. This is the old fat dad. Welcome back to another beautiful day on the Goober Nation gun range. Today, we are going to take a look at two battle-tested bullpup rifles, compare them, see what the difference is, and see if maybe there's one that's better than the other. One quick point of clarification before we begin. What is a bullpup? So a bullpup is any firearm where the barrel ends behind the trigger. So as you can see, here is my chamber. Well, I don't know if it's going to let you see down in there, but this is where the bullets actually feed into the chamber, and it is behind the trigger. Standard rifles have a barrel that terminates, that has a chamber in front of the trigger. So that's what a bullpup is. And bullpups are not just rifles. There are bullpup shotguns, there's bullpup SMGs, there's even a bullpup pistol, at least one that I know of. Which brings us to the subjects of our video today. First up is the Tavor X95. This is a rifle chambered in 5.56. It has a 16-inch barrel going from there to there. The overall length of the rifle from end to end is 26 1/8 inches. It weighs 7.9 pounds out of the package. And to address the elephant in the room, this Tavor is not stock, so some of you guys might not call this a fair comparison, but I think it is in the ideal configuration for this particular rifle. It has an upgraded M-LOK handguard. It has a Geisley trigger pack and Geisley trigger. It has a Mantigore gas vent gasket, I think it's called. I think that is all the upgrades, but it has about $500 to $1,000 worth of upgrades that do not come with the rifle stock. And here we have the Springfield Hellion. It also has a 16-inch barrel. It also weighs just about 8 pounds, and it comes in a little bit longer at 28 1/4 inches. The Springfield Hellion that I'm holding here is completely stock, mainly because they don't make any aftermarket parts for it yet, which is a shame because I think this platform could really benefit from a little bit of aftermarket love. But more on that later. Both of these rifles have military pedigrees. The Tavor is used by the Israeli military, and it has, I think it has a pretty long track record. And the VHS, or Springfield Hellion, is used by the Croatian military. I don't think it has as long of a military record, but I think it is fairly significant. I am not going to do a durability or reliability test. I will say that I've shot a couple hundred rounds through both of these with no malfunctions that I can think of off the top of my head. They've both performed flawlessly. If you want to know more about their durability, you should check out their military records. That's going to be a much better example and test of their abilities than anything I could do out here in the woods. Obviously, there's a lot of similarities between these two rifles. One of the ways we can really check to see if there's a significant difference is by doing an accuracy test. So I loaded both of these guys up with a bipod, a silencer, and a 2.5 by 10 scope. This is the Trijicon HX Credo, I believe it's called. Nice little scope. And we pushed the target out to 100 yards and ran 3 different kinds of ammo through the rifles. We have a Federal XM195, AAC's 77 grain Match King round, and finally Hornady's Varmint Express. The Federal and the Hornady were 55 grain, and the AAC is 77 grain. The results were the Hellion at 100 yards put out these 3 groups. These are 5-shot groups. Now, none of these were super spectacular. We didn't get anything under 1 MOA. Let's go one by one, starting with the XM195. That is a 2.6 MOA group right there. The AAC was a little bit tighter at 1.8 inches. And then finally, Hornady's 55 grainer, the Varmint Express, gave us a 1.3 MOA group at 100 yards. So that's the Springfield Hellion. Our lovely Tavor at 100 yards gave us this grouping. So we have our XM195 at 1.3 inches. This was just a tester shot to make sure I was on the paper. And then we have the Hornady round, 55 grain Varmint Express, 2.2 MOA. Finally, our 77 grain AAC at 1.3 MOA. Are any of these groupings spectacular? No, I wouldn't say so. But these are not precision rifles. These are duty rifles. They are not designed to give you the utmost accuracy. If you can see from my shooting here, I'm in kind of an awkward position using these because of the bullpup design. I have to do some weird stuff to brace the front and the back and get everything lined up. They are not made for bench shooting, and I think it's not reasonable to expect bench rest accuracy out of these. A couple of takeaways from our accuracy test, though, is that the Tavor definitely put out nicer groups. It wasn't a runaway success. It wasn't way ahead of the Hellion, but I think it was significantly ahead of the Hellion as far as accuracy. Now I want to talk about a couple of things that might have contributed to that. So this is the Hellion again, and I know they look awfully similar, so that's why I keep on repeating it, but it is empty here. And I am going to show you what the trigger press looks like on this bad boy. A lot of play right there. We connect with a wall and we pull it, pull it, pull it, and then it goes off. That is one nasty trigger. This thing is not a whole lot of fun to shoot. When you got your sights on the target and you're pulling and you're pulling, is it gonna break? Is it gonna break? And then finally it goes off. That could have definitely contributed to worse accuracy with the Hellion. Let's take a look at the Tavor's trigger as contrast. Again, here we go. No magazine in there. We are empty. And here is the trigger on the Tavor. Okay, oops, already went off. That's how much of a difference there is here. Ready again, I'm just touching it, put a little pressure on it, boom. It goes off. It is miles ahead of the Hellion. But going back to the intro of the video, this is where the unfair part comes in. The X95, the Tavor, has an aftermarket trigger. The stock trigger on the Tavor is not much different than the stock trigger on the Hellion. Creepy, mushy, not fun at all, takes forever to go off, not predictable. With the Geisley trigger and the Geisley trigger pack that is installed in this Tavor, it is a whole new world. Now, setting the trigger aside, as far as the other controls, I think I prefer the X95 a little bit better. You can find an ambidextrous mag release right here by your finger. It ejects those mags really nicely. The safety, again, is in a very similar position right there next to your finger. Same position you'd find it in the AR-15 style rifle, real easy and familiar. The bolt release is a little bit strange on the X95, but again, that's probably due to its bullpup nature. So when it locks back, you've got this big old, I don't know, thing on the buttstock, and that's what actually drops the bolt when you push that in. You see how it's flush now? Whoa, is it there? Yeah, there we go. The charging handle is here on, I guess we call that the left side of the rifle, and it just pulls back like that, and when you release, pops forward like so. It does not fold down. It's always going to be poking out on the side of your rifle no matter what you do. Where the X95 is familiar, the Hellion is a little bit funkier. So to drop a mag, you do not have anything up here by the trigger guard on either side. You have to go all the way back to the magazine and pop this little lever right here, and out she falls. It falls free pretty nicely. Doesn't quite eject it as firmly as the X95, but I don't really have any kind of problem with that. The charging handle is a little nicer on the Hellion, I have to say. It's back here, and let me see if I can show you. It is also ambidextrous. It'll go one way or it'll come out on the other side, and when you're not using it, it flips up nicely inside the guard right there, so it does not get in your way. The bolt release is also in the back, and I do not prefer this one. You have to pinch these two little nubbies together, and that drops the bolt. It's not as easy as using the X95. You just reach back there and smack it to drop it. You have to kind of get in there and give it a good old twisty pinch. Some more similarities: both the Hellion and the X95 have very decent backup iron sights. They're both built into the handguard, although I will give the win to the Hellion in this case, because as you can see with the X95, you got to kind of dig in there and pull them out, whereas the Hellion has spring-loaded buttons that just pop them right up there, which is kind of a neat little feature. Finally, how do they feel in hand? I really enjoy using Bullpups. They are not for everybody. I like the compact size. We are in a very woody, hilly kind of area, and I always prefer shorter, more compact firearms when I'm out here. Just prevents snagging and all that other not such fun stuff when you're out in the woods. Some folks are not going to want to make the compromises to get the compact package. I do enjoy it. And to me, here's the X95. This is probably the better feeling of the two rifles. Uh-oh. It just fits my body size and my arm length better. I can get my hand on the trigger guard, my fingers on the trigger real easily. Everything lines up really nicely for me, and it's a good length. The Hellion is just a smidge longer, and because of that, it's just a little bit more uncomfortable. It's not terrible though, honestly. Holding them back to back like this, I'm not seeing a whole lot of difference between the two. They're both very workable and really pretty darn comfortable. Both these Bullpups are 9 pounds without anything on them, and that is pretty darn heavy for this style of rifle, but it doesn't feel that heavy in your hands. If I was to hold a really lightweight AR-15 and then one of these guys, obviously I would feel a difference, but when you put it up to your shoulder, it just kind of sits there real nicely. You know, it just feels like I could control this one-handed, no problem. And this is the bigger of the two. This is the Hellion. Same thing with the X95. It just works. It just fits really nicely. I don't have any problem holding it up or tucking it in. I don't feel like I'm unbalanced. All the weight on both these rifles towards the back, and I'm not getting any kind of fatigue just by holding it up here any more than I think I would get with a standard rifle. They feel good, and they don't feel as heavy as the weight suggests. And the final thing I want to talk about is using a suppressor. So, with a suppressor on, the Hellion was by far the winner as far as comfort and shootability. It has a gas block that has two settings. Right here on the end of it, you can set it for suppressed shooting one side and unsuppressed shooting on the other, which I think is a really nice feature. There is no gas that comes out in your face on this side and very little gas that comes out the port on the other side. It is very shootable with a suppressor and very comfortable with a suppressor. The X95, on the other hand, is not that awesome. If it has an adjustable gas block, I'm not really sure how to adjust it. I think I've heard that there is maybe some sort of adjustability possible, but I don't really know how to use it. I do have, like I said before, the Manticore cover right here, which does cut down on gas a good bit, but you still get way more gas back in the face with the Tavor than you do with the Hellion, and the system is not really tuned, from what I understand, for suppressed shooting. When I was shooting these two, as far as how it felt recoil-wise, they both feel pretty darn awesome. Really light recoiling, but you know that should be an obvious conclusion because they are both heavy, and that really does cut way down on recoil, especially with such a light recoiling round to start with. 5.56 is not really a heavy recoiling round. Now I'm going to put it to you guys. If you had to choose only one of these, which one would you choose? Hellion or X95? I'm torn. It's a tough choice. I know a lot of you folks are going to be crying in the comments about how this wasn't a fair test because of all the aftermarket parts on the Tavor, but I don't really have options for aftermarket parts for the Hellion. And I will say, if the Hellion had a trigger option, a aftermarket trigger that was as good or even close to the Geisley over here, in my opinion, I think I would choose the Hellion. Its wonky controls kind of give it one little negative, but there's a lot going for it, especially if you're going to shoot suppressed, the adjustable gas block. I like that the charging handle tucks away. I like the overall design, the aesthetic. They both feel equally good in my hand. So with that caveat, if I could change out the trigger, I think I would go with the Hellion. As we sit today, though, I gotta say that I have been very impressed with the Tavor. It shoots better. It's a smaller package. It's got controls that I am comfortable and familiar with. I didn't touch on the safety of the Hellion. It is ambidextrous, but it is just in a weird spot. It is not easy to get to. You can't hit it with your finger, and your thumb has to come up off the back of the pistol grip to get it. The Tavor is just so much easier. You just kind of flick it on and off. Now, it's not a deal breaker for me. Again, like I said, if I could change the trigger, I'd probably go with the Hellion. But there's just so much going for the Tavor as is. It's hard not to say that the Tavor takes the win, especially in this configuration. And that's all I've got for you guys today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.